All right, we are back. Another segment of the Friday Night SmackDown version of Puck and Pod. Two of the three boys are here. Coach Frank, Bobby Bottles on the other side. Doing some YouTube content tonight. Love the comments, love the feedback coming so far. So we figure we put some stuff out on the tube, on the channel, get some, just talk about some things other than the NHL playoffs, which we have on our other our other clip, but there's other things going on. We want to get some perspective on it. We want to get some thoughts out. We want to talk about a little bit about the MLB. We want to talk about I guess the Jays focused big series coming out of the Bronx against the Yankees, and a little bit of a story coming out of that one, I'd say. Uh, Reese McGuire went over for. No, I'm kidding. We have the debut of maybe the next one, but arguably the best pitching prospect in the pipeline for the Jays has made his debut. And I say arguably because people still are clinging on to the hopes that Nate Pearson, it turns out to be something, I guess. Apparently got shelled again in his AAA start, but that's for another story. But actually, I want to get your take on that at some point, Rob. But we have the debut of Alek Manoah, uh, who had a fantastic start for the Jays. I believe he went 6 innings. And I'm saying to myself, okay, 6 innings. I forgot it was a 7 inning game, so it was almost a complete game for for a game one doubleheader. But wow, what I mean, 7 strikeouts, 2 hits, something like that. So, Rob, what do you think? I guess what were your initial thoughts, and do you agree with the move, bringing the guy up so early in his tenure? And just how he's been, kind of coming up the ranks of the organization so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I was trying to think of like scenarios like this. I think one of them was a few years ago when we had all the hype around Steven Strasburg, and then all of a sudden Matt Harvey comes out of nowhere and becomes like the dynamic. What do they call him? The Dark Knight for like 2 years, where he was just a stud. And everybody's been talking about Nate Pearson, and it was like, this is going to sound really funny. I liked Alek Manoah. I really liked the draft pick. I liked the Jays grabbing him, and I said this about kind of Jays fans or two Jays fans about this Jays because they've been under a lot of heat. But if Mark Shapiro knows one thing, it's pitching. Like, this guy can find pitching studs, and if you go look at his track record in Cleveland, he did a great job. I mean, I'm not going to go through the endless amount of pitchers they found, but he looked great. He looks big. I liked his slider. His fastball was in 95, 96. And tell me you didn't watch that and just love like his mom and the family going nuts up there in Yankee Stadium. I can't even imagine. You try to think of, there might not be a better place to start your career across sports than at Yankee Stadium. So kid looked good, and yeah, he looked great, and we'll see if he keeps this up. He was great in the minors, and apparently good dude. So the Jays may have found something. And now if you look at him, now it's like, hey, what if this guy can slot in as your 5-4, and you still got Ryu, and all of a sudden the pitching staff looks a little bit longer, a little bit looks like it's got a little more teeth. So
the question then becomes, the Jays have been notorious for, well, not just the Jays, but in general, but kind of follow with the Jays as they did with Vladdy and Bo. It's about tenure, right? It's about controlling, um, you know, future future years on their contract. So a guy like this, obviously injuries play a part. We know a bulk of their starting pitching has been injured. Bulk of their roster has been injured, essentially. So they were almost kind of strong-armed into calling this guy up. Um, was it necessary? Is he ready? Did they have to do it right now, considering service time and all of that? Me personally, my feeling is for them to spend the money on a guy like Springer and wanting to be competitive. This is a mindset that's, I think, starting to change in the Jays organization to finally say, you know what, the hell with it. If it's going to make us relevant and we have to start winning, and this guy's going to make us better, come on up, see what you got. Or else I don't think they would have done it.
I still believe this is an experimental year for the Jays. Like everybody thinks they were ready to compete. I've said they're not going. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They're not looking like they're going to make the playoffs. And I'm more targeting next year as a year where you're going to have a lot more questions answered. Who's going to be your shortstop? Because we don't know if it's going to be Bo Bichette. Who's going to be in the pitching staff? Because we don't know what's going to go on there. The relievers. This year they're answering a lot of questions. And I'm sitting there going, isn't it better to bring a guy up this year? You might lose a year of control. That's okay. But to see what he has now, see what these guys got now, so that next year you can hit the ground running. It sounds sick that already, I don't know, what are we, 40 games into the season? Or maybe even less. And it's like you're thinking about next year, but it's just like, why not? You lose a year of control, no big deal. The guy's 23. You might not want to sign him anyway at 29, 30 years old, these pitchers. So you just want to see what you got. And it's great to see, a guy like Vladdy, who I believe in one of our pods, we were talking and we were talking about Bo Bichette versus Vladdy Guerrero. And I was like, Vladdy isn't even scratched the surface. Yeah, he's grown some claws, and now he's breaking through that surface that he hasn't even touched yet. So we haven't seen the ceiling on him. We haven't seen the ceiling on Bo, but there's a lot of questions that's got to be answered about this team. Like, is Bo Bichette the starting shortstop for this baseball team?
Well, it's funny because I'd probably venture a lot of people would argue against this, saying that being experimental year, only because again, you just spent a ton of money on a guy like Ryu and then Springer, and it's like experimental to the point where you're carrying a pretty heavy bankroll spending on guys, and then Simeon on this year. I just don't see it as experimental. They probably would have brought in spare parts, right? So I still think they're going to go out and make a trade for a pitcher. I don't think they're content on the starting lineup, injuries or not. Because if you can put together a rotation of, then you got Ryu, you got Ray, who's been a nice bounce back. Mats has been,
Yeah.
better. Well, anything's better than what he did with the Mets last year. So that's three, right? And then you got a lot of outsiders. I know you, Rob, you liked Hatch, but again, so let's kind of run down the lineup.
Yeah.
Hatch is injured. Stripling doesn't look like he's going to be a long-term answer. Who else am I forget? Anthony Kay is back on the injured list, but he's kind of looking at one of those guys. Again, one of those kind of rotate. Trent Thornton's going to be a long reliever. So it's like you're missing two guys, right? So at what point do they dip in and say, okay, well, let's take a B-level prospect or something we know they probably have a lot of a certain position, and go out and grab some pitching. I kind of heard the name Chris Bryant around from a fielding perspective, but I just think if the Jays are in striking distance of that wild card, and because they have the offense to go, they have the offensive string in 5-6 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the pitching that'll make them lose 5-6 games in a row. So they got to shore something up.
And their defense. I've said this all for quite some time. Their defense isn't good enough. I believe they rank 20th, 15 to 20 in baseball in defensive efficiency or defense. Everybody don't worry about the Springer contract. That contract's going to be bad in the last 2 years, but that still gives you 5 years. If 1 year is wasted where he doesn't really play a lot, or this team doesn't make the playoffs, and I'm not by any means saying if you're in contention, don't make a trade or go for it. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, so this is a good year to experiment. I have a real issue talking. I love to talk about baseball for a minute, like MLB as a whole.
Sure.
The pace of play. I remember they wanted to make this an issue of contention or basically something that they wanted to fix. They were saying it's too slow, it's boring. People are getting bored. I can tell you, I love baseball. I'm bored to hell. I can't watch a whole baseball game anymore. It's just too long and too boring. I don't know why they won't shorten these games. They tried to. They started doing it. They got it down to 3 hours. Now we're back to 3:20 again. Where I'm watching a Jays game that's lasting almost 3.5, 4 hours for like a 9-inning game, which I hate it. I can't stand it. I don't know why they won't fix it.
So can I ask you one question? That rule change with the you must face 3 batters. Do you like that rule?
I hate the rule. I know why they did it. There were better ways of speeding the game up. I don't know why they picked that one. I understand why they did it, and I don't believe they do it in the playoffs because I think they still do it in the playoffs. It was. I feel like there were other ways to do it. Like I don't know why they need like a 3 minute warm up between half innings and all this stuff.
Yeah.
The game is too long. Now I got into an argument because I said the 7 inning game is actually great. They're in and out. It's 2 hours and 15, 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's great. And someone said, well, it's not the 9 innings traditional baseball. And it's like, dude, this is why baseball's dying. It's
That
because
really is the only argument if you really think about it. It's
but
just
it's and it's like, you know what though? Like 30, 40 years ago, baseball was the king. It was the number one sport in the United States and in North America and North American sports. You're sitting here like it's three and it's barely three right now. Like they've fallen so far behind basketball and so far behind football to the point where soccer is going to start knocking on the door because kids love soccer because it's quick. It's in, out, 2 hours. It's not slow. Baseball has become so slow. It's become either a home run or a strikeout. So it's become boring. It's basically a home run derby that I already don't watch the one time a year. It's during the All Star game. I don't know why baseball refuses to change. It's like their competition is the sun, and yet they're still like not getting ratings. I can't stand that they refuse to change. This is what's going to kill this sport. And I love baseball, but kids don't want to play it. And if kids don't want to play it, you don't have that pipeline coming. You don't have kids playing. You don't have kids watching.
how
What
about
happens?
the fact that it may be like it's too long of a season, maybe. You're talking about a
When
hundred and I don't know, like
it's way too long, but they don't want to change it because that's revenue,
well, no, of course. Well,
right?
listen, it's easy to say to change it, but we all know it's gonna happen. I'm talking about realistic changes. That's not a realistic change, but yeah, like they've instituted the pitch clock. They
Uh,
have so long to start.
yeah,
That and
that's the
the gimmick. I can't stand it. The gimmick of the runner starting on second base in
yeah.
extra innings. I don't know. It's a gimmick. It's gimmicky to me. I
I,
don't know. I
I
just
can't figure out why they don't go down to 140 games. Say we're going to double the playoffs, so instead of 5 teams, go to 8, like every other sport, except well, football's got 7 or 6. Go to 8. They were so hesitant to go from 4 to 5, and the
yeah.
wild card game was great. Go to 8 and just say the teams that don't make the playoffs, that first round we're going to share revenue so that you make up the lost gate that you. It's so easy to me, and it doesn't make sense that the sport is 5 or 6 months long and five of the 6 months are spent in regular season that mean nothing, and the one playoff round where there's all urgency, it's great, but it's only 1 month. It just doesn't make sense the way the sport is set up. And there's something that's not being talked about. The NBA is flirting with starting around Christmas, like they did this year. It's been a point that they're thinking about. Forget starting in November. Let's have our first games on Christmas Day because that's the big day for them, and then that would push them back into July and August. Nobody's talked about that. Will be a nail into the coffin of baseball because right now they're not getting numbers with no competition, none. Imagine if the NBA playoffs are now running into July and August. It will be the end of baseball as we know it.
Hmm. Well, hard to argue that one.
And the sick part is it's a regional game. We can't even talk about it. We can't. Even, we have the Dodgers that are a great team. We don't. It's not even national. We don't talk about it.
I
We have
know
nothing else to talk about.
I know it's not going to happen just because of the the history and the level of popularity, but hockey getting back on ESPN to me is going to grow that game more in the US. Just from the coverage alone from ESPN because ESPN is what it is, right? It's the sports leader in the US.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say it's going to catch baseball. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying it's going to be even more relevancy
Mm-hmm.
and might be something as an alternative to watch. Is all I'm trying to say.
It's going to take a little bit of market share, as in it's going to take a little bit of the
A little
viewership.
bit. Yeah.
Baseball's got to be more worried about soccer because if the MLS ever figures it out, they're going to fly past baseball. And everybody's going to laugh and say it's soccer or this and that. 30 years ago, baseball was light years ahead of the NFL. Look where they are now. You can't even compare. So baseball refusal to change. And baseball guy, I can't even argue with baseball guy because they're like 9 innings, 162 games. One team makes the playoffs.
Oh my
8-hour
gosh.
games. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's like, dude, what businesses work? What people work? The ones that pivot, the ones that can change. I mean, Amazon 20 years ago was selling books. Imagine if they didn't pivot. Imagine what Jeff Bezos would be worth today. Well, his ex-wife wouldn't get nearly as much in the divorce if he had just kept selling books instead of moving on to basically selling everything in the world. It's just unbelievable that they won't change.
Is that what they started with? Books?
They're a book company, and they said, you know
Jeez.
what? Let's pivot. And it's funny. That's how. Look at Uber. Uber was a driving company. Now they're a food delivery service. Soon they're gonna, like, I don't know. They're gonna be delivering everything. So
Somebody
don't
call
be
for a right leg?
Yeah, right. There we go. This is like to everybody in life. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to pivot. Anyway, on that note, let's get out of here. Like button, subscribe button, hit all the,
Comment, all that stuff.
yeah, comment. Like, baseball guy, get in here and tell me why baseball is still great. I'd love to hear.
All right. Peace.